On the morning of September 6, 2011, the St. Louis Cardinals stood 8.5 games back of the Atlanta Braves for the National League wildcard spot, with only 21 games left to play. If we treat every game as a coin flip, the Cardinals' odds of making the playoffs were just 0.8%, and their odds of winning the World Series were just 0.1%. Fewer than 2 months later, the Cardinals beat the Rangers in Game 7 to win the World Series on their home field in St. Louis. This is the story of the most unlikely World Series champions in MLB history. Expectations weren't particularly high for the Cardinals heading into the 2011 season. They missed the playoffs in 2010, finishing 5 games back of both the Cincinnati Reds for the NL Central Division title and the Atlanta Braves for the NL wildcard spot. At the time, only 4 teams from each league made the playoffs, the winner of each division and the team with the next best record. The Cardinals' 86-76 record was the 6th best in the National League. In 2011, the Cardinals ran it back with largely the same team that they had in 2010. They made a few moves in the offseason, but most of them were minor. They replaced Brendan Ryan with Ryan Theriot at shortstop, they signed Nick Punto as a utility infielder, and they signed veteran Lance Berkman to replace Ryan Ludwig in the outfield. Berkman was a household name for sure, but he was coming off of the worst season of his career. In 2010, he set career lows in batting average, on-base percentage, slugging percentage, OPS+, hits, home runs, and RWAR. Heading into spring training, it seemed like the Cardinals were destined for a repeat of 2010. Here's what their team looked like. They had stars like Albert Pujols, Matt Holliday, Adam Wainwright, and an aging Chris Carpenter, but it was hard to see how Ryan Theriot and a washed-up Lance Berkman were going to make the team better than it was the previous year. It would be an uphill battle for St. Louis to even make the playoffs in 2011. But then, the hill turned into a mountain. Early in spring training, pitcher Adam Wainwright suffered a torn UCL in the elbow of his pitching arm. He needed Tommy John surgery, meaning that he would miss the entire 2011 season and postseason. Wainwright was by far the Cardinals' best pitcher. He finished second in Cy Young voting in 2010, and he was the team's second most valuable player by RWAR, trailing only Albert Pujols. This was a huge loss for St. Louis. Heading into the start of the regular season, the betting odds on the Cardinals to win the World Series were plus 2,500, meaning that a $100 bet would win $2,500 for the bettor if the Cardinals won the World Series. This translates to a 4% chance of winning. But of course, the odds makers set the odds at a worse price than what they think the real odds are, in order to ensure that the house always wins. This means that the odds makers likely estimated that the true odds of the Cardinals winning the World Series heading into the 2011 season were quite a bit worse than 4%. 2 other National League teams were given the same odds of winning the World Series as the Cardinals were, and 4 National League teams were given better odds. At the top were the Philadelphia Phillies, who added Cliff Lee in the offseason to assemble one of the best pitching rotations that the game of baseball had ever seen. With the Phillies being the heavy favorites to win the NL East, and the reigning world champion San Francisco Giants being favored to win the NL West, the expectation was that the Cardinals' primary competition for a playoff spot in 2011 would be the Cincinnati Reds, the Milwaukee Brewers, and the Atlanta Braves. The Cardinals would need to beat out at least 2 of these 3 teams to make the playoffs, either via the wild card or the NL Central Division title. Despite the preseason loss of Adam Wainwright, the Cardinals started off the 2011 season strong. Offensively, they were carried by their outfielders. Despite missing 8 of the first 9 games of the season following an emergency appendectomy, Matt Holliday dominated early on, maintaining a batting average over 400 through May 5th, and finishing the month of May with a 975 OPS. The decision to bet on a Lance Berkman comeback season paid dividends immediately, as the right fielder had an OPS north of 1100 through St. Louis's first 50 games. The Cardinals also got a lot of unexpected production from a pair of players in their sophomore seasons. Outfielder John Jay hit 349 with a 922 OPS through the first 2 months of the season, and Alan Craig carried a 337 batting average and a 915 OPS through May 31st. By the end of May, the Cardinals sat in first place in the NL Central and second place in the entire National League, with a 33-23 record. And now it's time to introduce you to a website that is going to feature prominently throughout the first part of this video, coolstandings.com. This website hasn't been updated since 2013, as you can tell by, well, everything about it. Look at that Twitter logo. Look at that Go button. Look at that Yahoo. Look at that dead link. Age aside, it has some very useful data for telling the story of the 2011 Cardinals. Cool Standings provides information about each team's playoff chances for every day of every season from 1903 until its final update at the end of 2013. At the end of the 2013 season, Cool Standings was integrated into Fangraphs. If you want to find information about playoff odds from 2014 to present, you can go to Fangraphs for it. But if you want to know about playoff odds prior to 2014, the information can be found on coolstandings.com. Cool Standings has two different methodologies for determining playoff probability: Smart Mode and Dumb Mode. Dumb Mode treats each remaining game as a 50-50, whereas Smart Mode uses Bill James's Pythagorean theorem, which determines win expectancy based on runs scored and runs allowed, to adjust for the strength of the team in question relative to opposing teams remaining on the schedule. Heading into June, the Cardinals had a 66.7% chance of making the playoffs according to Smart Mode, which was the highest of any National League team. Dumb Mode gave them a 55.5% chance, which was second in the NL behind the Philadelphia Phillies. The Cards would slip a bit in June, as the month featured a 7-game losing streak, including 3 losses to the division rival Milwaukee Brewers. They would go 11-15 for the month, allowing the Brewers to tie them for first in the NL Central, with the Reds and the Pirates not too far behind. The Cardinals' smart playoff odds dipped to 33.3%, and their dumb playoff odds dipped to 37.6% by the end of June. The Cardinals, Brewers, and Pirates traded places atop the NL Central for most of July. On July 24th, the 3 teams were tied for first. The Cardinals and Pirates both won on July 25th, while the Brewers didn't play, leading to St. Louis and Pittsburgh maintaining their tie for first, while Milwaukee sat a half a game behind. Of the 3 teams, the Smart Mode on Cool Standings liked the Cardinals' chances of winning the division the best, giving them a 36.6% chance of winning the NL Central and a 41.4% chance of making the playoffs. Then, everything changed when the Brew Crew attacked. From July 26th to August 28th, the Brewers went 27-5. The 2011 Brewers were a formidable team, led by 2011 NL MVP Ryan Braun. The team also had Prince Fielder, who would finish third in MVP voting. Nyjer Morgan, Ricky Weeks, and Corey Hart were solid contributors as well, and on the mound the Brewers had a solid rotation, featuring ace Giovanni Gallardo, veteran Randy Wolf, and off-season acquisitions Zach Greinke and Sean Markham. Greinke missed the first month of the season with a fractured rib, and he didn't pitch well when he initially returned, but he was a big part of the Brewers' hot streak, going 6-1 with a 2.61 ERA in 7 starts from July 26th to August 28th. Gallardo was even more impressive during this stretch, going 5-1 with a 1.71 ERA in 6 starts. On July 27th, the Cardinals traded outfielder Colby Rasmus and a few others to the Toronto Blue Jays for Octavio Dotel, Edwin Jackson, Corey Patterson, and Mark Zepchinski. While the Cardinals gave up the best player in this trade in Colby Rasmus, they had a surplus of outfielders, with Matt Holliday, John Jay, Lance Berkman, Alan Craig, and the aforementioned Rasmus all competing for playing time, in a league that did not yet have a DH spot. This trade allowed the Redbirds to exchange one of their many outfielders for players that could address their weaknesses. Edwin Jackson took over the 5th spot in the rotation from Kyle McClellan, a reliever that had been moved to the rotation following the Adam Wainwright injury, and Octavio Dotel and Mark Zepchinski bolstered the bullpen. The Cards made another trade a few days later, acquiring shortstop Rafael Furcal from the Dodgers. The Cardinals' middle infield was by far the weakest part of their lineup, and the acquisition of Furcal aimed to address that. Even with their new additions, keeping up with Milwaukee was an impossible task for the Cardinals. They went 16-16 during the Brewers' hot streak. Also, Matt Holliday had to exit the game in the 8th inning on August 22nd because a moth got stuck in his ear. This isn't at all related to the story, I just thought it was too bizarre to not mention. Anyway, in the span of 34 days, Milwaukee went from half a game back of the division lead to 10.5 games up, giving them the largest division lead in MLB. They initially tried to lure the moth out of Holliday's ear by turning off all the lights and shining a flashlight, hoping that the moth would be attracted to the flashlight. It didn't work. They had to pull it out with tweezers. The Brewers' smart probability of making the playoffs jumped from 27.4% to 99.4%, and the Cardinals' smart probability of making the playoffs plummeted from 41.4% to 1.3%. Not only were the Cards 10.5 games behind the Brewers, but they were also 9.5 games behind the Braves for the NL wildcard spot. The moth was still alive after it was removed from Holliday's ear. Holliday reportedly decided to take it home with him. Over their next 7 games, the Cardinals and Brewers both went 4-3, and the Braves went 3-4. On September 1st, the betting odds on the Cardinals to win the World Series was plus 20,000, meaning that a $100 bet would return $20,000 if the Cardinals won the World Series. Before play on September 6th, the Cardinals were 8.5 games behind the Braves for the NL wildcard, with only 21 remaining. Their smart probability of making the playoffs was 1.4%, and their dumb probability was just 0.8%. If we apply the logic of dumb mode to the postseason and give the Cardinals a 50% chance of winning each round, their dumb probability of winning the World Series was just 0.1% on the morning of September 6th. If the Cardinals wanted to beat the odds and make the postseason, not only would they need to play incredibly for the remainder of the season, but they would also need either the Braves, the Brewers, or the Phillies to choke. With 8.5 games separating St. Louis and their closest competitor, the Braves, the Cardinals could win all of their final 21 games and still miss the playoffs if the Braves won at least 14 of their remaining 22 games, the Brewers won at least 11 of their remaining 20 games, and the Phillies won at least 7 of their remaining 25 games. And again, that's if the Cardinals win every one of their final 21 games. For each game that the Cardinals lose, the situation gets even more dire. If the Cardinals go 19-2, the Braves would only have to win 12 of their remaining 22 games. The Brewers would only have to win 9 of 20, and the Phillies would only have to win 5 of 25. If the Cardinals go 16-5, the Braves would only have to win 9 out of 22 games. The Brewers would only have to win 6 out of 20 games, and the Phillies would only have to win 2 of their final 25 games. If the Cardinals go 11-10, the Braves would only have to win 4 of 22, the Brewers would only have to win 1 of 20, and the Phillies could lose all 25 remaining games and still finish with a better record than the Cards. With their chances of catching the Brewers and winning the NL Central being just 0.1%, the Cardinals' best shot at making the postseason was to qualify by beating out the Atlanta Braves for the wildcard spot. The Braves were an interesting team in 2011. Despite being contenders, they were in a bit of a transition period. They still had productive veterans like Chipper Jones and Tim Hudson, as well as not-so-productive veterans like Derek Lowe, but they also had a ton of young talent. 21-year-old Jason Hayward, who was supposed to be the future face of the franchise, was playing in his second season after putting up 6.4 RWAR as a rookie the previous year. 23-year-old Craig Kimbrell and 21-year-old Freddie Freeman finished first and second respectively in Rookie of the Year voting at the end of the season. Kimbrell was part of the three-headed monster in the Braves bullpen, along with Johnny Venters and Eric O'Flaherty, both of whom were in their age 26 seasons. And while the Braves' most frequent starting pitchers in 2011 were veterans Tim Hudson and Derek Lowe, every game not started by one of those two players was started by a pitcher in his age 25 season or younger. And before I tell you how the rest of the season played out, I think it's time to introduce a side plot. You see, while the Cardinals were fighting for their life in the National League, a parallel storyline was brewing in the American League. While the Cardinals had a 1.4% smart probability of making the postseason heading into September 6th, the Tampa Bay Rays had a 1.6% smart probability. This was actually an improvement for the Rays. 2 days prior, their smart probability of making the playoffs was just 0.5%. The Cardinals were 8.5 games behind the Braves for the NL wildcard on the morning of the 6th, while the Rays were 7 games behind the Boston Red Sox for the AL wildcard.
Got it that time. 4.5 games out now in the wild card. How about this?
And he makes the catch that ends the game. The Tampa Bay Rays come into Fenway Park, and they take game 1 of this 4-game series. Tampa Bay Rays come in and take 3 out of 4 from the Red Sox. Red Sox had a 7-game lead a week ago. It's down to 2.
And the ball game is over. The Cardinals take 3 of 4 from the Phillies.
Frustrating loss for the Cardinals as they lose 5-1. Disappointing, but hey, mathematically you're still alive.
Rodriguez has it. Rays win. Rays are winners, and they've closed the gap to a half game.
Swing and a miss. And the Cardinals have pulled within 1 game of the Atlanta Braves in the wild card.
Johnson. He got him! The Orioles have beaten the Red Sox 6-3. The Red Sox wild card lead is gone.
Match ball game. Kendrick strikes out Freddie Freeman, and the Braves will head to their locker room and scoreboard watch.
Back to Jackson. And the Cardinals have tied the Atlanta Braves for the wild card lead.
From September 6th to September 27th, the St. Louis Cardinals went 15-5, including a 3-game sweep of the Braves, and the Tampa Bay Rays went 13-8, including 6 wins and 1 loss against the Red Sox. Meanwhile, the Atlanta Braves went 7-14, and the Boston Red Sox went 6-15. Heading into Game 162, the Cardinals and the Braves were tied for the NL wildcard, and the Red Sox and the Rays were tied for the AL wildcard, setting up September 28, 2011 to be one of the greatest nights of baseball ever. In the NL, the Braves played the first-place Philadelphia Phillies, while the Cardinals played the last-place Houston Astros. In the AL, the Red Sox played the last-place Baltimore Orioles, while the Rays played the first-place New York Yankees. The Braves, Rays, and Red Sox all started their games at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, and the Cardinals started an hour later, as they were playing in Houston. The Yankees got out to a big early lead against the Rays in St. Petersburg. They scored 1 run on an error in the first inning, and then Mark Teixeira hit a grand slam off of Rays ace David Price to extend the lead to 5-0 in the second inning. The Phillies and Braves each scored a run in the first inning, and the Red Sox and Orioles finished the first 2 frames without a run crossing the plate for either side. The Cardinals may have joined the action a bit later than the other teams, but once the game started, they wasted no time getting on the scoreboard. 7 of the Cardinals' first 8 batters recorded base hits, and the team scored 5 runs off of Astros pitcher Brett Myers in the first inning. The Red Sox struck first against Baltimore in the third inning, when Dustin Pedroia singled in a run. The Orioles then took the lead in the bottom of the frame, though, as J.J. Hardy hit a 2-run home run off Jon Lester. The game was then tied again in the top of the fourth, as the Red Sox scored a run on a balk from Orioles pitcher Alfredo Simon. In Atlanta, Dan Uggla hit a 2-run home run off Cole Hamels in the bottom of the third to give the Braves a 3-1 lead over the Phillies. In St. Pete, Teixeira hit his second home run of the game in the fourth inning, extending the Yankees' lead to 6-0. After 4 innings of play in the Eastern Time Zone games and 1 inning of play in the Central Time Zone game, the Red Sox were tied 2-2, the Rays trailed 6-0, the Braves led 3-1, and the Cardinals led 5-0. In the top of the 5th inning, Dustin Pedroia homered to give the Red Sox a 3-2 lead over the Orioles. Also in the top of the 5th, Andruw Jones homered for the Yankees to increase their lead over the Rays to 7-0. These scores remained the same through the 7th inning. The Braves threatened to extend their lead in the 6th inning, but a perfect throw from Phillies right fielder Hunter Pence cut down Dan Uggla at the plate, ending the inning and keeping the score 3-1. In the 7th inning, an error allowed the Phillies to make it a 1-run ball game. Meanwhile, the Cardinals continued to dominate the Astros in Houston. Chris Carpenter got some run support for himself by driving in a run with a single in the 3rd inning, and the Cardinals added another run with a ground out in the 5th inning, making the score 7-0. Through 5 innings, Carpenter had allowed only 1 base runner. At the end of 7 innings of play in Atlanta and St. Petersburg, 6.5 innings of play in Baltimore, as the game had entered a lengthy rain delay in the middle of the 7th inning, and 5 innings of play in Houston, the Cardinals had a 99% win probability, the Braves had a 76% win probability, the Red Sox had a 64% win probability, and the Rays had a win probability that was so low it rounded down to 0%. The Braves took their 3-2 lead over the Phillies into the 9th inning. Manager Freddie Gonzalez handed the ball to All-Star and soon-to-be Rookie of the Year closer Craig Kimbrell to close out the game. Kimbrell had saved 46 games thus far this season, which led the National League. The Braves' win probability was 85% entering the inning. The first batter was Placido Polanco, and Kimbrell allowed him to reach base with a single. Kimbrell bounced back nicely, however, striking out Carlos Ruiz. 2 outs to go. A ground ball could end the game. The pitcher's spot was up next, and the Phillies sent Ben Francisco out to pinch hit. Francisco worked the count full, and Kimbrell lost him on the 6th pitch of the at-bat, putting 2 men on with 1 out. The next batter, Jimmy Rollins, also worked the count full, and again, Kimbrell lost the battle, walking a second consecutive batter to load the bases. The walk to Rollins decreased the Braves' win probability by 18%. There was now a runner on third base with fewer than 2 outs, meaning that a deep enough fly ball would tie the game. And Chase Utley understood this. He hit a fly ball to left field. Pete Orr, who had come in to pinch run for Polanco, scored, and the game was tied. Hunter Pence came to bat next, and Kimbrell issued his 3rd walk of the inning. He was removed from the game, and Chris Medlin got Michael Martinez to pop out, escaping the inning with the game still tied. The Red Sox and Orioles were still in a rain delay, but the Yankees and Rays were also entering the late innings. Despite their 7-run deficit and 0% win probability, the Rays didn't give up. Former Yankee Johnny Damon led off the bottom of the 8th inning with a single off of Yankees lefty Boone Logan. Ben Zobrist followed this up with a double to left field. Logan then plunked the next batter, Casey Kotchman, loading the bases with nobody out.
What do you think the odds are that the Rays rally in this game?
I think the Rays are not going to win tonight. I think that the one thing that we have eliminated tonight is the Red Sox season is not going to end tonight. They live to play another day.
The Yankees removed Logan and brought in Luis Ayala to try to get out of the jam. Sam Fuld pinch hit for catcher Kelly Shopik and worked a walk, allowing Damon to score and keeping the bases loaded, still with no outs. Ayala then hit Sean Rodriguez with a pitch, allowing another run to score. Ayala finally recorded the first out of the inning by striking out Desmond Jennings, then he recorded another out via a BJ Upton sacrifice fly. In a lot of situations, you're happy to trade an out for a run, but that's not the case when you're losing 7-2. The Rays' best hitter, Evan Longoria, came to bat next, with 2 runners on and 2 outs, signaling the start of what Tom Verducci called the most thrilling 129 minutes in baseball history.
And there it is! Long drive! Deep to left! Gone! Longoria hits a long one!
The score was now 7-6. Ayala escaped the inning without allowing any more runs. Despite the monster 6-run inning, the Rays were still huge underdogs. At the end of the 8th inning, their win probability was still only 15%. But the big inning had given them momentum, and it had given them hope. Just 3 minutes after Longoria's home run, the Cardinals recorded the final out of their game. They won 8-0. Chris Carpenter pitched a complete game 2-hit shutout in which he struck out 11 batters. Now, all the Cardinals could do was crowd around the TV to watch the Braves play the Phillies. If the Braves won, a tiebreaker would need to be played. If the Braves lost, the Cardinals would finish their miraculous late-season comeback with a trip to the postseason. As the Phillies and Braves went to extra innings, the Rays were fighting for their lives in the bottom of the 9th. The Yankees were still up 7-6, and they gave the ball to Corey Wade for the save. Wade recorded 2 quick outs, getting Ben Zobrist to fly out and Casey Kochman to ground out. The Rays' win probability was down to 4%. Sam Fuld was due up next, and manager Joe Maddon sent out Dan Johnson to pinch hit. It was an interesting choice to say the least. In 2011, Johnson played in only 31 games and was worth negative 0.9 RWAR. He hit 119, 187, 202 with an 11 OPS+. By comparison, Fuld had a 91 OPS+ in 2011. Corey Wade threw right-handed, and both Fuld and Johnson hit left-handed, so there was no matchup advantage by going from Fuld to Johnson. Ben Zobrist didn't understand the decision either. In a 2016 interview, he said, quote, "I remember being on the bench and seeing Joe make the call and Dan Johnson going up to hit. And all of us are going, are you kidding me? Sam had been swinging it well. And Dan is a great hitter and had always been a good hitter, but that year was probably the worst of his career. He hadn't had a hit with our team since like April. He had gotten called up in September, but barely played at all because we were in the race the whole time. And he had barely gotten any pinch hits, and when he did, I don't think he did anything with them. So this is a guy sitting on no live at-bats for about 3 weeks, and we're going to plug him in with the season on the line and put it on his shoulders. We're thinking like, what are you doing, Joe? Sam has a good chance of getting in scoring position if he gets on base. I felt bad for Dan. Maybe Joe Maddon knew something that the rest of us didn't. Maybe he just had a gut feeling, or maybe it was pure luck. But with 2 strikes and 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th inning, Dan Johnson, who hadn't recorded a hit in the major leagues in over 5 months, did this.
Johnson hits it down the right field line. That ball's going to be fair and gone. Dan Johnson.
The Rays had come back from down 9 games to tie the Red Sox to the wildcard spot. And now they had come back from down 7 runs to tie game 162 with 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th inning. Scott Proctor replaced Corey Wade on the mound for New York, and he got out of the inning without any additional damage, sending the game to extra innings. 11 minutes after the Johnson home run, the lengthy rain delay in Baltimore came to an end, and the Red Sox and Orioles resumed their game in the 7th inning. The Red Sox would take their 3-2 lead into the 9th, just like the Braves had done against Philadelphia. Before the game in Baltimore reached the 9th inning, though, there was a change of score in Atlanta. Scott Linebrink took the mound for the Braves in the top of the 13th inning. Linebrink struck out the first batter of the inning, issued a walk to the second batter, and then induced a flyout from the third batter. Chase Utley came to bat with 2 outs and a runner on first base. He singled to right field, moving Brian Schneider to third. Hunter Pence came to bat next, and hit a broken bat single to drive in the go-ahead run. Linebrink got the next batter to fly out, but the damage was done. The Phillies had their first lead in the game since the first inning. Entering the 9th inning, the Braves had a win probability of 85%. Entering the bottom of the 13th, their win probability was just 19%. The Braves had their 3, 4, and 5 hitters due up in the bottom of the 13th inning. After a 7-pitch at-bat, future Hall of Famer Chipper Jones struck out swinging. The Braves had 2 outs remaining. Dan Uggla came to bat next and worked a walk. Freddie Freeman came to bat with 1 out and 1 on, and did the absolute last thing you want to do in that situation.
To first. 1 to Rollins. Throw to first. And the Philadelphia Phillies have ended the Braves season.
After being 8.5 games back on the morning of September 6th, the Cardinals surpassed the Braves on the final day of the season. The St. Louis Cardinals were going to the postseason. Now, all eyes were on the Rays and the Red Sox. Red Sox closer Jonathan Papelbon took the mound in the bottom of the 9th inning with a 1-run lead and an 80% win probability. But I feel like I've heard this story before. In fact, I feel like I've heard it twice already. Papelbon made quick work of the Orioles' first 2 batters, striking out Adam Jones on 5 pitches and striking out Mark Reynolds on 4 pitches. The Red Sox needed just 1 more out. Their win expectancy was 95%. Chris Davis came to bat with the game on the line and ripped a double to right field. The Red Sox win expectancy dropped to 86%. Nolan Reimold came to bat next, and with 2 strikes on him, he hit a double of his own, driving in the tying run. The Red Sox win expectancy was now just 39%. The next batter was Robert Andino, a guy with a career OPS plus of 66.
Andino to left field, in comes Crawford, can't make the catch. He pops up, the throw to the plate is going to be off the mark, and the Orioles walk off with the win. The Red Sox lose in a crucial 162nd game of the year.
You might be thinking to yourself, that ball probably should have been caught. And I would agree with you. The Red Sox left fielder who didn't make the play was Carl Crawford, one of the team's big offseason acquisitions. The Red Sox signed Crawford to a 7-year, $142 million contract prior to the 2011 season. Crawford, of course, had spent the first 9 years of his career playing in Tampa Bay. And here he was in 2011, wearing a different jersey, but still doing his part to help the Rays make the playoffs. The Red Sox weren't eliminated just yet. The Rays and Yankees were still playing, and if the Rays lost, the 2 teams would have to play a tiebreaker to determine which team would go to the postseason. Despite the devastating loss, the Red Sox still had hope, but that hope would last all of 3 minutes. At 12:02 a.m. Eastern Time, Robert Andino walked it off for the Orioles. At 12:05 Eastern Time, in the bottom of the 12th inning, Evan Longoria did this.
2-2 and a line shot down the left field line. That ball is gone, and the Rays win it. A line drive home run by Evan Longoria, and the Rays storm the field.
On the morning of September 4th, the Tampa Bay Rays sat 9 games back of the Boston Red Sox for the AL wildcard. They had a 0.5% smart probability and a 1.8% dumb probability of making the postseason. 24 days later, this swing by Longoria sent the Rays to the playoffs. Cool Standings also has a leaderboard for the top comebacks and top collapses from 1903 to 2013. Using Smart Mode, the Rays coming back from 0.5% odds to make the playoffs was the 6th biggest playoff comeback, and the Cardinals coming back from 1.1% odds was the 19th biggest comeback. Using Dumb Mode, it was the Cardinals that had the more impressive comeback in 2011, as their comeback from 0.8% odds ranks as the 6th biggest. The Rays' comeback ranks 13th, according to Dumb Mode. As far as the top collapses, the 2011 Red Sox and the 2011 Braves are both in the top 5 using Smart Mode. The Red Sox failing to make the playoffs after having a 99.6% probability ranks 3rd, and the Braves failing to cash in on their 99.2% probability ranks 5th. Dumb Mode also ranks both teams in the top 5 biggest collapses. But, of course, our story doesn't end here. The Cardinals and Rays making the playoffs is remarkable on its own, but there are still 3 rounds of the postseason to play if the Cardinals want to become the most unlikely World Series champions. Hi, hello, it's me, the guy that made the video. Are you enjoying it so far? If you are, be sure to subscribe, that way you don't miss out on any future uploads. And if you're really enjoying the video, maybe check out my Patreon. The link is in the description, it's $5 a month, and you'll get access to exclusive content, and in addition, it's just a really good way to support me. That way I can make more videos like this in the future. Thanks. Now let's get back to 2011. The Cardinals were rewarded for their incredible comeback with an NLDS matchup against the Philadelphia Phillies, the team with the best record in baseball. Before the start of the division series, the betting odds on the Phillies to win the World Series was plus 180, by far the shortest odds of any team. On the other end of the spectrum were the St. Louis Cardinals and the Arizona Diamondbacks, tied for the longest odds with plus 1400. By our war, the 2011 Phillies were the best pitching team of all time, and there's a pretty significant gap between them and the second place 1997 Yankees. The Phillies had 3 starting pitchers in the top 5 of NL Cy Young voting in 2011. Roy Halladay, Cliff Lee, and Cole Hamels. Halladay, Lee, and Hamels also made up 3 of the top 4 NL pitchers by RWAR and 3 of the top 6 pitchers by RWAR in either league. The Phillies' other 2 starting pitchers, Roy Oswalt and Vance Worley, were also quite good, and their bullpen featured some highly capable arms too. The Phillies' team ERA+ in 2011 was 127. Scoring runs was not going to be easy for St. Louis. And while pitching was their strong suit, the 2011 Phillies had a good lineup as well. They had solid productive veterans like Chase Utley, Jimmy Rollins, Carlos Ruiz, and Placido Polanco. Shane Victorino had a 5.5 RWAR season in 2011, and Hunter Pence had a 159 OPS plus for the Phils since coming over from Houston in a trade. Ryan Howard was on the decline, but he still had some power in his bat. The Cardinals' postseason roster had a lot of flexibility, with Terrio, Punto, and Descalzo all capable of playing multiple positions off the bench. Having a deep and versatile bench was a big asset in the days when pitchers still hit in the NL. Manager Tony La Russa would have plenty of options to platoon, pinch hit, and double switch in order to create advantages in different situations. The Cardinals started off Game 1 with a bang, as Lance Berkman hit a first-inning home run off of Phillies ace and future Hall of Famer Roy Halladay. Their 3-0 lead held until the 4th inning, when Shane Victorino's RBI single made it a 3-1 game. Cardinals starter Kyle Lohse was pitching well, but things began to fall apart in the 6th inning. After giving up singles to Jimmy Rollins and Hunter Pence, Lohse allowed a 3-run home run to Ryan Howard, giving the Phillies a 4-3 lead. Lohse then gave up a single to the next batter, Shane Victorino, and Raul Ibanez followed it up with another home run, extending the Phillies' lead to 6-3. Octavio Dotel relieved Lohse and struck out the next 2 batters to end the inning. After a 1-2-3 top of the 7th, Mark Zepchinski took the mound for the Cardinals in the bottom of the 7th. He allowed singles to the first 3 batters he faced, including pitcher Roy Halladay, loading the bases with 0 outs. He was then pulled by manager Tony La Russa and replaced by Mitchell Boggs. Boggs induced a ground ball from Pence, and the Cardinals got the force out at home, keeping the score 6-3 for the moment. However, the next batter, Ryan Howard, drove in a run with a sac fly, then Boggs allowed 2 consecutive singles to Shane Victorino and Raul Ibanez. The score was now 9-3 Phillies. The Phillies scored 2 more runs in the 8th, making the score 11-3. The Cardinals did plate 3 runs in the 9th, but it was nowhere near close to enough. The Phillies won the game 11-6. Chris Carpenter started Game 2 for the Cardinals, but he wasn't as sharp as he was in Game 162 of the regular season. The Phillies got to him early, scoring 3 runs on 3 hits in the first inning, then scoring an additional run in the second inning. The Phillies held on to their 4-0 lead until the 4th inning, when the Cardinals got a rally of their own going against Cliff Lee. A walk to Lance Berkman and a series of hits from Yadier Molina, Ryan Terrio, John Jay, and Rafael Furcal brought the Cardinals within 1. But the rally and the inning ended there, as Jay was thrown out at the plate trying to score the tying run. John Jay would make up for this out at home plate in his next plate appearance. He came to bat with 2 outs and a runner on second in the top of the 6th, and he drove in the tying run with a single. After a 1-2-3 bottom half of the 6th, Alan Craig led off the top of the 7th with a triple against Cliff Lee. Albert Pujols followed it up with an RBI single, giving the Cardinals a 5-4 lead. They would hold on to this lead for the remainder of the game, and 5-4 would be the final score. Cardinals starter Chris Carpenter pitched only 3 innings and gave up 4 runs. St. Louis used 6 relief pitchers for the final 6 innings, and they allowed only a single batter to reach base. The series was now tied at 1 game apiece, with the teams heading to St. Louis. Jaime Garcia pitched for St. Louis in Game 3, with the Phillies giving the ball to their 3rd ace, Cole Hamels. The game was a pitcher's duel. As good as Hamels was, Garcia matched him every step of the way through the first 6 innings. The Phillies finally got something going against Garcia in the top of the 7th inning. Victorino led off the inning with a single, and moved to second on a passed ball. Garcia retired the next 2 batters, bringing up the number 8 hitter, Carlos Ruiz, with 2 outs and a man on second. The Cardinals had a decision to make. Hamels was due up next for Philadelphia, so the Cardinals could intentionally walk Ruiz to bring Hamels to the plate with 2 outs and a runner in scoring position. There were drawbacks to this, though. While intentionally walking the number 8 hitter to bring the pitcher to the plate with 2 outs was once common in the National League, it became less popular as people began to realize that it negatively affected the team issuing the walk the following inning. By forcing the pitcher to bat this inning, the opposing team would have the top of the lineup up to bat the next inning, with 0 outs. It's much more advantageous to have the pitcher lead off the following inning rather than the hitter at the top of the lineup. The number 8 hitter is also usually the worst batter in the lineup other than the pitcher, and you usually don't want to give a team's worst batter a free pass. There were even more factors to consider in this case, however, since it was late in the game. Hamels was pitching great, but he had thrown 117 pitches through 6 innings. The Phillies had already tipped their hand that they would be pinch hitting for Hamels if his spot in the lineup were to come up, as Ben Francisco was swinging in the on-deck circle. If they chose to pitch to Ruiz, and he made the final out of the inning, is there a chance that the Phillies would send Hamels back out for a 7th inning of work? If you're the Cardinals, would you rather face a tired Hamels, or face the Phillies bullpen? Is it better to force Hamels out of the game now, since you've only managed 5 hits against him through 6 innings? But at 117 pitches, it's likely that the Phillies put a reliever in the next inning anyway, right? If you can get out of the inning now, they'll be forced to pinch hit for that reliever next inning, regardless of how he performs. But what about the current situation? Is it better to face Ruiz with 1 runner on, or Francisco, who was a slightly worse hitter, with 2 men on? The Cardinals chose to walk Ruiz intentionally, and faced Ben Francisco instead. And Francisco hit the second pitch of the at-bat over the left center field fence for a 3-run home run. The Cardinals would score a run in the 7th and another run in the 9th, but they would ultimately lose Game 3 3-2. The NLDS is at best of 5, so the Phillies were now just 1 win away from eliminating the Cardinals and moving on to the NLCS. The starting pitchers for Game 4 were Roy Oswalt for the Phillies and midseason acquisition Edwin Jackson for the Cardinals. The Phillies got off to a very quick lead. Jimmy Rollins hit a double on the first pitch of the game, Chase Utley drove in Rollins with a triple on the 4th pitch of the game, then Hunter Pence drove in Utley with a single on pitch number 5. Just 5 pitches into the game, the Cardinals' win expectancy was down to 27%. Fortunately, Jackson was able to strike out the next batter, Ryan Howard, on a 3-2 count, and Molina threw out Pence trying to steal second for a double play. Pence was actually safe, but the second base umpire called him out, and that's all that matters. Victorino then flew out to end the inning. The Cardinals got a run of their own in the bottom of the 1st, thanks to a Lance Berkman RBI double. Jackson and Oswalt would trade scoreless frames until the bottom of the 4th. Berkman led off the bottom of the 4th with a walk. Oswalt then plunked Matt Holliday on the first pitch, giving the Cardinals runners on 1st and 2nd with no outs. Yadier Molina lined out, allowing Holliday to move to 3rd, and then David Freese came to the plate. David Freese is a name that I have not mentioned a single time so far in this video. He was the Cardinals' starting third baseman in 2011, but he missed significant time during the season due to injury. He missed most of May and June after a Scott Linebrink pitch broke his hand. He also suffered a mild concussion after getting hit in the head with a pitch in August, though he missed only 3 games. Freese was a solid player when he was in the lineup, posting a 119 OPS+, but he played in only 97 of the team's 162 games. Although Freese's name has only come up once so far, I promise you will be hearing his name plenty going forward. With 2 men on and 1 out, Freese swung at the first pitch he faced, and he lined it into the outfield for a double. Both Berkman and Holliday came in to score, giving the Cardinals a 3-2 lead. Freese's double had a win probability added of 21%, meaning that the Cardinals' probability of winning the game after the outcome of Freese's plate appearance was 21% higher than their probability of winning was before his plate appearance. In the 5th inning, something unexpected happened, as Roy Oswalt delivered a pitch to Skip Schumacher.
And there's a squirrel that ran right in front of home plate.
The squirrel was dubbed Rally Squirrel, a nickname that doesn't make much sense to me since the Cardinals already had the lead at the time that the squirrel ran across home plate. The Cardinals held on to their narrow lead until Freese's next at-bat, in the bottom of the 6th inning. With a runner on 1st and 2 outs, Freese hit the second pitch of the at-bat over the outfield fence, extending the Cardinals' lead to 5-2. This home run had a win probability added of 18%, increasing the Cardinals' win expectancy to 91%. The Phillies would score 1 more run on a Fernando Salas wild pitch in the 8th, but Jason Mott would close the door with a 1-2-3 9th inning, securing the victory for St. Louis and forcing a Game 5. Each team had their ace going in Game 5. Chris Carpenter started for the Cardinals on 4 days rest, and Halladay started for the Phillies on 5 days rest. Game 5 had pitcher's duel written all over it. Surprisingly, the Cardinals struck early against Halladay. Rafael Furcal led off the game with a triple, and then Skip Schumacher got the best of Halladay in a long at-bat, finally driving the 10th pitch of the plate appearance into the outfield for an RBI double. Halladay bounced back nicely though. He got Pujols to ground into a fielder's choice, and even though Berkman reached base on a catcher's interference, Halladay retired Holliday and Molina to end the inning. He minimized the damage, but unfortunately for Halladay, there was no way to undo the run that had scored. Halladay pitched a gem for the remainder of the game. He threw a total of 8 innings, he did not allow any more runs, and he didn't allow more than 1 base hit in any inning after the 1st inning. But that 1 run in the 1st inning would make all of the difference. Because as good as Halladay was, Chris Carpenter was even better. Carpenter pitched a complete game shutout, allowing only 3 hits and 0 walks. In the bottom of the 2nd inning, the Phillies had a runner on 2nd with 1 out, after Shane Victorino hit a double. This was the only time in the entire game that the Phillies had a runner in scoring position with fewer than 2 outs. Carpenter got out of the jam, if you can even call it a jam, with ease, using only 9 pitches to induce a pop-out from Raul Ibanez and a ground out from Placido Polanco. In the 9th inning, the Phillies had the heart of the order due up, but Carpenter retired them just as easily as he had throughout the game. He used only 8 pitches to get Chase Utley to fly out, Hunter Pence to ground out, and Ryan Howard to ground out. In Game 162, Chris Carpenter pitched a complete game shutout to send the Cardinals to the playoffs. Just 9 days later, he pitched another complete game shutout to upset the best team in baseball and send the Cardinals to the NLCS. While the Cardinals were able to defy the odds once again and move on to the championship series, unfortunately the Rays' miracle run in the AL came to an end. They lost the division series 3-1 to the Texas Rangers, but it was much closer than the final game count suggests. The Rays won Game 1 9-0 on the back of 7 shutout innings from 22-year-old rookie Matt Moore. Moore had pitched only 9 1/3 Major League innings prior to starting Game 1 of the ALDS, yet he shut down one of the best offenses in baseball like it was nothing. The Rangers won the next 3 games, but all 3 games were very close. The Rays actually scored more runs in the series than the Rangers did, but it was the Rangers that moved on to the ALCS. In the other NLDS matchup, the Brewers beat the Diamondbacks in 5 games, with a narrow 3-2 victory in extra innings in Game 5. The Brewers and Cardinals would battle it out in a best-of-7 NLCS to determine who would win the National League pennant and advance to the World Series. Once again, the Cardinals were underdogs. Prior to the start of the NLCS, the betting odds on the Cardinals to win the World Series were plus 300, while the Brewers had the shortest odds of the 4 remaining teams, at plus 225. And of course, the Brewers had already beaten the Cardinals for the NL Central Division title, finishing the regular season 6 games ahead of St. Louis in the standings. Jaime Garcia and Zach Greinke were the starting pitchers for Game 1. Both pitchers allowed runs early, with the Cardinals scoring 1 run in the top of the first, and the Brewers scoring 2 runs in the bottom of the first. The Brewers would hold on to their 2-1 lead through 3 innings. Following a Lance Berkman single and a Yadier Molina walk, David Freese came to bat with 2 men on and 1 out in the top of the 4th inning. He swung at the first pitch of the at-bat and launched a home run over the right center field fence, giving the Cardinals a 4-2 lead. His homer had a WPA of 30%. Lance Berkman would tack on another run with a single in the top of the 5th, but the Brewers would get a rally going against Jaime Garcia in the bottom of the 5th. Corey Hart singled, Jerry Hairston doubled, and then Ryan Braun doubled, driving in both Hart and Hairston. Prince Fielder then homered on the first pitch of the at-bat, giving the Brewers a 6-5 lead. With 4 runs crossing the plate in the inning and still no outs, Garcia was removed from the game and replaced by Octavio Dotel. Dotel got his first batter, Ricky Weeks, to hit a grounder back to him, but he threw the ball away, allowing Weeks to reach safely. Dotel then gave up a home run to Yuniesky Betancourt. The Brewers' lead was increased to 8-5. The Cardinals were only able to score 1 more run, and they lost Game 1 9-6. Game 2 was a blowout. The Cardinals got off to an early 2-0 lead in the first inning thanks to an Albert Pujols home run, and they never looked back. They won the game 12-3 to even the series. Edwin Jackson gave up 2 runs in 4 1/3 innings pitched, David Freese and Nick Punto each drove in 2 runs, and Albert Pujols went 4 for 5 with a home run, 3 doubles, and 5 runs batted in. Both teams had their ace on the mound for Game 3. We already know about Carpenter's heroics in Game 7 of the DS, but Gallardo was stellar for the Brewers in the DS as well, allowing only 2 runs in 14 innings pitched. Gallardo was the starting pitcher for Milwaukee in Game 5 of the division series, just like Carpenter was for St. Louis, and he allowed only 1 run in a game that the Brewers would eventually win 3-2. The Cardinals got to Gallardo early in Game 3 though. After Carpenter threw a scoreless top of the first 5 batters reached safely for the Cards in the bottom half of the inning. Rafael Furcal singled, John Jay doubled, Albert Pujols doubled, Matt Holliday walked, and Lance Berkman walked. Gallardo did get 2 big outs by inducing a ground ball double play from Yadier Molina with the bases loaded and no out. David Freese came up to bat next though, and he drove in the Cardinals' 4th run of the inning with a double that appeared to go off of the glove of Corey Hart. Gallardo intentionally walked the 8-hitter, Nick Punto, to bring Carpenter to the plate, and he got Carpenter to ground out to end the inning. The Brewers struck back in the top of the 2nd. They started the inning with 3 straight singles, the 3rd of which drove in a run. They scored 1 more run in the inning on a sac fly from the pitcher Gallardo, bringing them within 2 runs of St. Louis. The Brewers scored another run on a Mark Kotsay homer in the 3rd, and Gallardo settled in after his rough first inning, but they would ultimately lose the game 4-3. The Cardinals' bullpen completely shut down the Brewers' offense. Fernando Salas, Lance Lynn, Mark Zepchinski, and Jason Mott pitched the final 4 innings of the game, and they did not allow a single base runner. Game 4, Kyle Loesch versus Randy Wolf. Just like they had in Games 1 through 3, the Cardinals scored first in Game 4, when Matt Holliday hit a solo home run in the bottom of the 2nd inning. Alan Craig hit a homer of his own in the bottom of the 3rd, making the score 2-0 Cardinals. The Brewers tied the game in the fourth thanks to a Prince Fielder double, a Jerry Harrison Jr. double, a Unieski Betancourt single, and a crafty Jerry Harrison Jr. slide. Milwaukee then took the lead an inning later, as Ryan Braun drove in Nyjer Morgan with a single. The Brew Crew scored one more run on an error in the top of the sixth, extending their lead to 4-2. The Brewers would hold on to win the game and tie the series at 2 games apiece. The Cardinals continued their trend of scoring first in Game 5. They opened the scoring in the bottom of the second inning. Lance Berkman led off the inning with a single, Matt Holliday flew out, and then David Freese was hit by a pitch, bringing Yadier Molina to the plate with runners on first and second and 1 out. Molina doubled, driving in Berkman and moving Freese to third. Jerry Harrison made a great play to retire Nick Punto, bringing up Cardinals pitcher Jaime Garcia with 2 outs and 2 men on. Just 1 pitch after his great catch, Harrison let Garcia's grounder go right through his legs, allowing Garcia to reach base safely and both Freese and Molina to score. Greinke and Garcia traded scoreless frames until the bottom of the fourth, when the Cardinals added another run off the bat of pitcher Jaime Garcia. After 4 shutout innings, the Brewers finally got something going against Garcia in the top of the fifth. With Jonathan Lucroy on second, outfielder Corey Hart hit a line drive single, driving in the Brewers' first run of the game. 1 run is all they would get though. After allowing a follow-up single to Jerry Hairston, Garcia was relieved by Octavio Dotel, who struck out 2011 NL MVP Ryan Braun to end the inning. The Cardinals would tack on another run, with an Albert Pujols single in the bottom of the 6th inning, and 2 more runs on a Matt Holliday double in the bottom of the 8th. They would win the game 7-1, and take a 3-2 series lead back to Milwaukee. In Game 6, the Cardinals scored first again, making it a perfect 6 for 6 in scoring first in the series. They got to Milwaukee pitcher Sean Markham in the first inning, just like they did against Greinke in Game 1, against Markham in Game 2, and against Gallardo in Game 3. After Furcal started the inning with a pop-out, Jay hit a line drive single, and Pujols walked. Berkman then drove in Jay with a line drive single of his own. Matt Holliday came to bat next, and he hit a weak grounder back to Markham. Markham threw home, and Pujols was out? Are you sure about that, ump? The blown call wouldn't matter too much. David Freese came to bat next, and he hammered the first pitch out of the ballpark for a 3-run home run. Swinging at the first pitch had worked out well for Freese thus far in the postseason. His go-ahead double in Game 4 against Philadelphia, and his go-ahead home run in Game 1 against Milwaukee were also the result of first pitch swinging. This home run had a WPA of 22%. The Cardinals led 4-0 after the first half inning, and had a win expectancy of 82%. The Brewers scored a run in the bottom of the first as Corey Hart hit a solo home run, but the Cardinals got it right back in the top of the second, with a home run from Rafael Furcal. Then the Brewers decided, no, actually we will be the ones hitting the home runs, and both Ricky Weeks and Jonathan Lucroy went deep in the bottom of the second, making it a 5-4 game. But in the top of the third inning, Albert Pujols played an Uno reverse card, and hit the 6th home run of the game, in not even 2.5 innings. Later in the inning, Nick Punto drove in a run with a sacrifice fly, and then Alan Craig drove in 2 more with a single. At the end of 2.5 innings of play, the score was 9-4 Cardinals. St. Louis had a 90% probability to win the game, and with it, the series. The Brewers took 1 step forward in the bottom of the 4th, as Unieski Betancourt drove in a run with a double, but they took 2 steps back in the top of the 5th, as the Cardinals scored 2 runs due to a series of errors and a sacrifice fly. The Brewers scored 1 more run in the bottom of the 5th, and then things settled down a bit. Takashi Saito and Mark Zepchinski traded 1-2-3 innings in the 6th, and neither team scored in the 7th either. At the end of the 7th, the Cardinals' win expectancy was 99%. Then Albert Pujols made the situation even more dire for Milwaukee, as he drove in an additional run in the top of the 8th to make the game 12-6. The Brewers hadn't recorded a hit since the 5th inning, but they needed to get going in the 8th if they wanted to keep their season alive. Lance Lynn came in for St. Louis to pitch the 8th. Lynn got Prince Fielder to ground out to lead off the inning. 5 outs to go. Ricky Weeks came up to bat next, and Lynn got him to line out. 4 outs remaining. Jerry Harrison was up next, and on a 3-2 pitch, Lynn got him to swing and miss to end the inning. 3 outs remaining. Still no hits for Milwaukee since the 5th inning. The Cardinals were held off the score sheet in the top of the 9th, and Jason Mott, who had only allowed a single base runner in 7 innings pitched so far this postseason, was brought in to pitch. Unieski Betancourt led off with a ground out. 2 outs remaining. George Gutaris pinch hit for Jonathan Lucroy and hit a deep fly ball to center field, but John Jay tracked it down and made a fantastic catch. 1 out remaining. Mark Kotze pinch hit for pitcher John Axford, and it took Mott only 3 pitches to strike him out and end the game. The St. Louis Cardinals were champions of the National League, and they were headed to the World Series. David Freese was named NLCS MVP. He hit .545 in the series, with 3 home runs, 9 runs batted in, and an OPS of nearly 1.7. Matt Holliday and Albert Pujols were great in the series as well, as was nearly the entire Cardinals bullpen. On the morning of September 6th, the Cardinals' dumb odds of winning the 2011 World Series were just 0.1%. On the morning of October 19th, their odds were 50%. Their opponent would be the Texas Rangers, who had just beaten the Detroit Tigers 4-2 in the ALCS. The Rangers had a prolific offense, which was led by outfielder Nelson Cruz in the championship series. Cruz hit 6 homers and drove in 13 runs in the series, and was aptly named ALCS MVP. Like the Cardinals, the Rangers also received fantastic pitching performances from their relief pitchers, with their bullpen allowing only 4 runs in 27 1/3 innings pitched. The Cardinals, of course, were the underdogs. The betting odds on the Cardinals to win the World Series was +135, and the betting odds on the Rangers to win were -155. After adjusting for built-in house profit, the betting odds suggested that the Cardinals' probability of winning the World Series was around 40%.
I'm going Texas in 7. This thing is going to come down to a play here, a play there. The reason I like Texas, I think they're a bit more athletic.
I got to agree with you here, Texas, but I'm going 6 games, and I'm even one up you here. Michael Young will be the MVP. He's the face of the Texas Rangers. He's going to have that trophy over his head in Arlington.
C.J. Wilson and Chris Carpenter were the starting pitchers for Game 1 in St. Louis. Wait, in St. Louis? But the Rangers won 6 more games than the Cardinals did in the regular season. Shouldn't the Rangers have home field advantage? Nope. From 2003 to 2016, home field advantage in the World Series was awarded to the team that came from the league that won the All-Star game. The National League won the All-Star game in 2011, so the Cardinals got home field advantage in the World Series. You may think that's a dumb way of determining home field advantage, but prior to 2003, home field advantage simply alternated between the National League and the American League each season. At least it was based on something now. And the American League losing the All-Star game was actually the Rangers' fault, to an extent. The National League won 5-1, with the biggest play of the game being a 3-run home run that Prince Fielder hit off of Rangers pitcher C.J. Wilson. Game 1 was a pitcher's duel, as was expected with each team's ace on the mound. Through 3 innings, no runs had scored, and only 3 men had reached base. Carpenter tossed a 1-2-3 top of the 4th, and the Cardinals struck first in the bottom of the 4th. Wilson plunked Pujols to lead off the frame, then Matt Holliday doubled, giving the Cardinals runners on 2nd and 3rd with no outs. Berkman came to bat next and hit a single, driving in both Pujols and Holliday. The Cardinals led 2-0, but their lead wouldn't last very long. Adrian Beltre led off the next inning with a single for the Rangers, and 2 batters later, Mike Napoli hit a 2-run home run to tie the game. Wilson and Carpenter would trade scoreless half innings in the bottom of the 5th and the top of the 6th. In the bottom of the 6th, St. Louis got a scoring opportunity after David Freese hit a 1-out double, and a wild pitch allowed him to move to 3rd base. Wilson managed to strike out Yadier Molina, removing the possibility of Freese scoring on a groundout or a sacrifice fly. Wilson then walked Punto on 4 pitches, bringing up the pitcher's spot. The Cardinals brought in Alan Craig to pinch hit for Carpenter. Craig was a right-handed batter, and he OPS'd 1,000 against left-handed pitchers during the 2011 regular season. The Rangers responded by taking out left-hander C.J. Wilson and bringing in right-hander Alexi Agondo from the bullpen. Agondo had pitched 10 1/3 innings so far in the postseason, and he allowed only 4 hits and only 1 run. But Alan Craig got the best of him, driving the ball to right field and giving the Cardinals a 3-2 lead. With Carpenter now out of the game, it was up to the Cardinals' bullpen to maintain this narrow advantage. The bullpen was fantastic in the NLCS, and it continued to be fantastic in Game 1 of the World Series. Fernando Salas, Mark Zepchinski, Octavio Dotel, Arthur Rhodes, and Jason Mott pitched a scoreless final 3 innings, allowing only 1 hit. The Cardinals took Game 1 by a score of 3-2. In Game 2, starters Jaime Garcia and Colby Lewis both had shutouts going through 6 innings. They'd only allowed 4 total hits combined. Garcia breezed through the top of the 7th, and the Cardinals managed to get some base runners in the bottom of the 7th. With 2 outs in the inning, David Freese stood on 3rd base, Nick Punto stood on 1st base, and Garcia was due up to bat. Garcia had thrown only 87 pitches in the game through 7 shutout innings, but with a chance to score a run, Alan Craig was sent to the plate to pinch hit, ending Garcia's day. The Rangers then made a decision that made absolutely no sense to me. Colby Lewis's pitch count was only 96, and he had allowed only 4 hits in the game. But instead of giving him a chance to get out of the inning, the Rangers brought in Alexi Agondo to pitch to Craig, just like they had in Game 1. And Craig lined a single to right field, just like he had in Game 1. Agondo proceeded to get Rafael Furcal to ground out to end the inning, but the Cardinals now had a 1-run lead heading into the 8th, with a dominant bullpen to hold that lead. Fernando Salas and Mark Zepchinski combined to pitch a 1-2-3 8th inning, and Jason Mott was handed the ball in the 9th to save the game and send the Cardinals to Texas with a 2-0 series lead. Mott had pitched 9 shutout innings thus far in the postseason, recording 5 saves, and only allowing a single hit. The Cardinals' win expectancy heading into the 9th was 85%, but with the way that Mott had been pitching, their chances seemed to be much higher than that. Ian Kinsler led off the 9th for Texas, and he hit a little blooper that found grass for a single. Kinsler now had as many hits off of Mott as the previous 28 batters that he had faced. Kinsler then stole second, just barely beating the throw from Yadier Molina. Following the hit and the stolen base, the Cardinals' win expectancy dropped to 65%. Then Andrus hit a little flare out to right field for a single, and he advanced to second on a misplay by Albert Pujols. This play had a WPA of 26%. And even though the Rangers were still losing in the 9th, they were now 61% favorites to win the game, with runners on second and third and no outs. After allowing the hit to Andrus, Jason Mott was removed from the game, and Arthur Rhodes was brought in to face lefty Josh Hamilton. Rhodes induced a flyout from Hamilton, and Kinsler came in to score from third, tying the game. In a way, both Rhodes and Hamilton did their jobs. Rhodes' job was to get Hamilton out, which he did. Hamilton's job was to drive in the tying run, which he also did. Andrus advanced from second to third on the play. Rhodes was then immediately taken out of the game after throwing just a single pitch, back when that sort of thing was allowed, and Lance Lynn was brought in to face Michael Young, hoping to keep the game tied. But Young hit a 3-2 pitch into the outfield, deep enough to allow Andrus to score from third base. The Rangers had their first lead of the game. They came into the top of the 9th with a 15% win expectancy, and they left the top of the 9th with an 82% win expectancy. Texas brought in their star closer Neftali Feliz in the bottom of the 9th. Feliz had a 1.62 ERA plus during the regular season, and he'd allowed just 1 run in 7 2/3 innings pitched thus far in the postseason. He started off the inning by walking Yadier Molina, but he made quick work of the next 3 batters, striking out Nick Punto, striking out Skip Schumacher, and inducing a flyout from Rafael Furcal. The series went to Arlington tied at 1 game apiece. Game 3, Kyle Loesch versus Matt Harrison. Since the Rangers were now the home team, the teams would have DHs rather than the pitchers hitting. In most circumstances, this would benefit the American League team, as American League rosters were often constructed with a DH in mind, while National League rosters were not. However, the DH spot may have actually been a benefit to the Cardinals, as it allowed them to have all 4 of their good-hitting outfielders in the starting lineup. The effect of this was felt immediately, as Alan Craig, who was not in the starting lineup for the first 2 games of the series and was used as a pinch hitter instead, hit a first-inning home run to give the Cardinals an early lead. This 1-0 lead held until the 4th inning. After a single from Albert Pujols, Matt Holliday hit a perfect double play ball. Kinsler's throw to first was off target, but Mike Napoli made a nice play to apply the tag and complete the double play. Except the first base umpire Ron Cooper called Holliday safe. Lance Berkman then hit a single, and David Freese came up to bat with runners on first and second and 1 out. He hit a ground ball that got through to the outfield for a double, driving in Holliday. Yadier Molina was then intentionally walked to load the bases and set up the double play. John Jay hit a ground ball, but too slow for a double play. Instead, Napoli fielded it and decided to try to get the force out at home. It was the right decision, but it was the second bad throw from a Rangers infielder in the inning, as the ball got past catcher Yorvit Torrealba, allowing 2 runs to score. Then Ryan Theriot hit a grounder through the hole between third base and short, driving in another run. The Cardinals came out of the top of the 4th with a 5-0 lead. But the Rangers weren't ready to concede just yet. Michael Young led off the bottom of the 4th inning with a home run. Adrian Beltre then singled, and Nelson Cruz hit his 7th home run of the postseason to bring Texas within 2. However, the Cardinals got these 3 runs right back in the top of the 5th. Freese drove in a run with a groundout, then Molina drove in 2 more with a double. The game continued to yo-yo. Texas scored another 3 runs in the bottom of the 5th, then St. Louis scored 4 runs in the top of the 6th. Included in those 4 runs was a 3-run homer by Albert Pujols. Just 1 inning later, Pujols hit another homer, extending the Cardinals' lead to 8. In the 9th inning, with the Cardinals already winning 15-7, Pujols added 1 more run for good measure, with his 3rd home run of the game. In total, he went 5 for 6, with 3 home runs and 6 runs batted in. After 2 one-run pitchers duels, the Cardinals won a slugfest in Game 3, scoring 16 runs on 15 hits. Then, in Game 4, they scored 0 runs on only 2 hits. Derek Holland completely shut down the Cardinals' offense, pitching 8 1/3 shutout innings. Both of St. Louis's hits came off the bat of Lance Berkman, who went 2 for 3. Every other Cardinal went hitless, including David Freese, who had his 13-game hitting streak snapped. The shutout also snapped the Cardinals' streak of scoring first in 10 straight postseason games. The Cardinals lost 4-0, and the series was once again tied. The teams would play 1 final game in Arlington, then return to St. Louis for Game 6 and, if necessary, Game 7. The Rangers and Cardinals had their aces back on the mound in Game 5, Chris Carpenter versus CJ Wilson. St. Louis returned to their trend of scoring first, opening the scoring in the second inning. Wilson had some control issues early on, as he walked Matt Holliday, threw a wild pitch, allowing Holliday to move to second, and then walked Lance Berkman. 2 batters later, Yadier Molina drove in Holliday with a single. Then Skip Schumacher drove in Berkman with a ground out. Texas got a run back in the bottom of the third, as a solo home run by Mitch Moreland made it a 2-1 ball game. But then the game settled down. Wilson and Carpenter both recorded scoreless 4th and 5th innings. Wilson started the top of the 6th with a strikeout, but after he allowed a single to David Freese, he was taken out of the game and replaced by Scott Feldman, who proceeded to finish the inning without allowing any runs. With 2 outs in the bottom of the 6th, Adrian Beltre took Carpenter deep, tying the game. Carpenter then gave up consecutive singles to Nelson Cruz and David Murphy, but he escaped the inning by inducing a flyout from Mike Napoli. Alexi Ogando came in to pitch the top of the 7th for the Rangers. He got 2 quick outs, but then found himself in some trouble. He walked Albert Pujols, then gave up a single to Matt Holliday. The Rangers threw home, and Holliday advanced to second on the throw, giving the Cardinals men on second and third with 2 outs and Lance Berkman due up to bat. The Rangers chose to intentionally walk Berkman to pitch to David Freese instead. Berkman had been hitting well, and he was a switch hitter, so he had the handedness advantage, but David Freese had been the Cardinals' best hitter this postseason. The decision worked out for Texas, though, as Ogando got Freese to fly out to end the inning. Carpenter pitched 1 more strong inning in the 7th, sending the game to the 8th inning, still tied at 2-2. Ogando and Darren Oliver combined for a scoreless top of the 8th, and Octavio Dotel took the mound for the Cards in the bottom of the 8th. Dotel gave up a leadoff double to Michael Young, but bounced back nicely by striking out Adrian Beltre. He then intentionally walked Nelson Cruz, and Mark Zepchinski was brought in to face the left-handed David Murphy, with runners on first and second and 1 out. Zepchinski got Murphy to hit a ground ball, but it was hit right back at Zepchinski, who was unable to field it. Murphy reached safely, loading the bases for the right-handed Mike Napoli. Napoli lined the 3rd pitch of the at-bat to center field, driving in Young and Cruz. The Rangers led 4-2 going into the 9th inning. Feliz was given the ball to close out the game in the top of the 9th. He started the inning by plunking Alan Craig, giving the Cardinals a base runner. But Feliz then struck out Albert Pujols after an 8-pitch at-bat, and Craig was caught stealing for a double play. After another lengthy battle, Matt Holliday worked a walk, but Feliz struck out Lance Berkman to end the game. The Rangers were now 1 win away from becoming World Series champions. The Cardinals would need to win 2 games in a row, an outcome that had just a 29% likelihood of occurring, according to championship win expectancy. Jaime Garcia and Colby Lewis were the starting pitchers for Game 6. Both pitchers were fantastic in Game 2 of the series, and they would be looking to replicate that performance. However, it was clear early on that Game 6 would not be the low-scoring battle that Game 2 was. Jaime Garcia gave up more runs in the first inning of Game 6 than he did in his 7 innings pitched in Game 2, as a Josh Hamilton single gave the Rangers an early 1-0 lead. In the bottom of the first inning, Colby Lewis also gave up more runs than he had in all of Game 2, as Lance Berkman hit a 2-run home run to make the score 2-1 Cards. Texas quickly tied the game though, thanks to an RBI double from Ian Kinsler in the top of the 2nd. The 2 pitchers managed to settle in a bit, as Lewis threw a 1-2-3 bottom of the 2nd, and both pitchers faced the minimum in the 3rd. Cardinals manager Tony La Russa decided to pull Garcia early, and he put Fernando Salas in to pitch the 4th inning. This was an interesting move. The Cardinals bullpen was great for most of the postseason, but Texas has been doing some damage against them recently. And they continued to do damage in the top of the 4th. After Nelson Cruz reached base on an E7, Mike Napoli drove him in with a line drive single, giving the Rangers a 3-2 lead. The Cardinals tied the game back up in the bottom of the 4th, without recording a hit. Lance Berkman reached on an E3, Matt Holliday walked, David Freese grounded out, moving Berkman to 3rd base, and Yadier Molina grounded out, driving in Berkman. Nick Punto then struck out to end the frame. It wasn't a pretty inning, but it was enough to even the score. The 3-3 tie wouldn't last long though. Josh Hamilton led off the top of the 5th by reaching on an E5, the 4th error committed in the past inning and a half, and then Michael Young drove him in with a double to put the Rangers back on top. In the bottom of the 6th, with 1 out, Lance Berkman singled, Matt Holliday reached on another error, and David Freese walked, giving the Cardinals a prime scoring opportunity. Rangers manager Ron Washington brought in Alexi Ogando to get out of the jam, but he walked Yadier Molina on 5 pitches, allowing the tying run to score with the bases still loaded. Nick Punto came up to bat, and on the 2nd pitch of the at-bat, Rangers catcher Mike Napoli, who is known more for his hitting than his defense, fired the ball to 3rd base. Beltre used his foot to block Holliday from reaching the base and tagged Holliday, who was called out. Honestly, it's a bit unclear if this was the right call or not. There isn't really a great camera angle. But the call from the umpire was out. Instead of bases loaded and 1 man out, The Cardinals now had runners on first and second with 2 outs. This pickoff had a win probability added of 15% for the Rangers. It proved to be extremely important, as Ogando's command was non-existent. He threw a wild pitch 3 pitches later, allowing the runners to move to second and third. Had Napoli not picked off Holliday, this wild pitch may or may not have allowed Holliday to score from third. But he would have scored one way or another, as Ogando then proceeded to walk Punto. Ron Washington pulled Ogando in favor of Derek Holland, who had pitched 8 1/3 shutout innings in Game 4. Holland was able to get John Jay to ground out to end the inning. Holliday injured his hand on the pickoff play, and Alan Craig took over in left field. The Rangers started off the top of the 7th with a bang. Or 2 bangs, I suppose. Adrian Beltre hit a home run to give the Rangers the lead once again, and then Nelson Cruz followed it up with a homer of his own. It was Cruz's 8th home run of the postseason, tying the record at the time for most home runs in a single postseason. Texas now led 6-4, and they weren't done. Later in the inning, with a runner on second and 2 out, Ian Kinsler singled, extending the Rangers' lead to 3. After Kinsler's single, the Cardinals had a single game win expectancy of just 10%, and a championship win expectancy of just 6%. Their chances got even worse after the next half inning, as Furcal, Terrio, and Pujols went down 1-2-3 in the bottom of the 7th. The Cardinals were down 3 runs with only 6 outs to work with. Their probability of winning this game was down to 6%, and their probability of winning the World Series was down to 4%. Zepchinski set down the Rangers in order in the top of the 8th, sending the Cardinals back up to bat in the bottom of the 8th. Lance Berkman led off the inning with a flyout, but Alan Craig gave St. Louis hope with a 1-out solo home run. Craig was only in the game because Holliday hurt his hand on the controversial pickoff play. Still, the Cardinals needed to score at least 2 more runs, and they only had 5 outs left to do so. Freese came up to bat next and grounded out, but the Cardinals got a 2-out rally going, with Yadier Molina, Daniel Descalzo, and John Jay hitting 3 straight singles. The Cardinals were unable to capitalize, however, as Furcal grounded out to end the inning. Jason Mott pitched a scoreless top of the 9th, sending the game to the bottom of the 9th, with the Cardinals needing to overcome a 2-run deficit. Neftali Feliz, who was 6 for 6 in save opportunities this postseason, came in to pitch for Texas. He started off the bottom of the 9th by striking out Ryan Terrio. 2 outs remaining. The Cardinals' win expectancy was down to 4%, and their championship win expectancy was down to 2%. But then, a glimmer of hope. Albert Pujols lined the first pitch of the at-bat into the left center field gap for a double. Feliz then put the tying runner on base, walking Berkman on 4 pitches. Alan Craig came up to the plate, but he didn't have the same magic in his bat that he had in his previous appearance. He struck out looking. The Rangers were 1 out away from winning the World Series. David Freese came to the plate, hoping to keep the Cardinals alive. Feliz's first pitch to Freese was outside for a ball. Freese took the next pitch for a strike, evening the count at 1-1. The third pitch was a 97-mile-per-hour fastball, and Freese swung through it. The Cardinals were down to their final strike. Feliz went back to the fastball, and David Freese did this.
Into right, well hit. Back at the wall. It's off the wall. 1 run scores. Here comes Berkman. Freese has tied it.
Freese's triple had a win probability added of 54%, and a championship win probability added of 29%. By championship win probability added, it is the 6th most pivotal play in baseball history to not come in Game 7 of the World Series, or Game 8 of the 1912 World Series. But as much as Freese deserves credit for his clutch hitting, this ball could have been caught. Tom Verducci claimed that Cruz was playing too shallow for the situation, and that he should have positioned himself in a way that would have made it impossible for a ball to get over his head. The broadcast made a similar remark.
The Rangers, even in their no doubles defense, allows Freese to hit a double.
In addition to potentially playing too shallow, Cruz also didn't get a great jump off the bat, and he moved slowly toward the ball rather than running at full speed. And instead of realizing that the ball was going to get past him and preparing to field it off the wall and throw it in as quickly as possible, Cruz decided to leap at the ball, allowing it to bounce away from him and allowing Berkman to score easily from first. In a game full of poor defense on both sides, Cruz's inability to make the play on Freese's triple was the most impactful. Yadier Molina hit another fly ball to right field, but Cruz made the catch this time, sending the game to extra innings. Jason Mott returned to the mound in the top of the 10th for his second inning of work. He got Kinsler to pop out for the first out of the inning, but he gave up a single to Elvis Andrus. Josh Hamilton came up to bat next, and on the first pitch to the plate appearance, he hit a 2-run home run to right center field. The Rangers took their 2-run lead right back. Hamilton's home run had a win probability added of 43%, and a championship win probability added of 23%. The Cardinals were in the exact same position entering the bottom of the 10th that they were in entering the bottom of the 9th, down by 2 runs with 3 outs to work with. 40-year-old Darren Oliver was brought in to pitch. After an 8-pitch at-bat, Daniel Descalzo singled to right field to lead off the inning. John Jay followed it up with a single of his own, giving the Cardinals runners on first and second with no outs. The pitcher's spot came up to bat, but the Cardinals didn't have anyone left on their bench to use as a pinch hitter. Instead, they pinch hit for Jason Mott with another pitcher, Edwin Jackson. Then, before Jackson even stepped into the batter's box, they pinch hit for him with a third pitcher, Kyle Lohse. Lohse bunted the runners over to second and third, now with 1 out. With a couple of righties due up to bat, Ron Washington went to the bullpen, and Scott Feldman replaced Darren Oliver on the mound. Feldman got Theriot to ground out to third, but a run scored, making it a 9-8 game, with 2 outs and a runner on second base. Pujols was due up to bat next, and the Rangers decided to intentionally walk him to face Lance Berkman. Pujols had hit very well thus far in the postseason, but so had Berkman. And while Feldman would have had the handedness advantage against the right-handed Pujols, he did not have the advantage against the switch-hitting Berkman. Nevertheless, Pujols was walked, and Berkman came up to the plate with the game on the line. Berkman fouled off the first pitch for strike 1. He took the next pitch inside, bringing the count to 1-1. Berkman fouled off pitch number 3, moving the count to 1-2. For the second time in 2 innings, the Rangers were 1 strike away from winning the World Series. Feldman delivered the next pitch low and inside, and Berkman took it for ball 2. The 5th pitch of the at-bat was a fastball in the middle of the plate, and Berkman lined it into center field for a base hit, driving in Jay and tying the game. Berkman's single had a win probability added of 47% and a championship win probability added of 25%. Allen Craig came to bat with a chance to walk it off, but he grounded out to third base. Game 6 was going to the 11th inning. Although Kyle Lohse pinch hit in the 10th, his sole job was to lay down a bunt. Tony La Russa had no intention of leaving him in to pitch. Instead, he gave the ball to Jake Westbrook. Westbrook had pitched only 1 inning so far this postseason, a scoreless inning against Texas in Game 4. Westbrook allowed a single in the top of the 11th, but he got through the frame relatively easily. The Rangers sent out Mark Lowe to pitch the bottom of the 11th. The leadoff batter was David Freese. After starting the at-bat with 3 straight balls, Lowe battled back to fill the count at 3-2. And I'll let Joe Buck take it from here.
Freese hits it in the air to center. We will see you tomorrow night.
Freese's walk-off home run had a win probability added of 37% and a championship win probability added of 20%. The series was going to Game 7. Chris Carpenter got the nod to start Game 7 for the Cardinals. He pitched a gem in Game 162 of the regular season to get the Cardinals into the playoffs. He shut down the Phillies in Game 5 of the division series to send the Cardinals to the NLCS, and he pitched well in Games 1 and 5 of the World Series. The Cardinals would ask him to do it one more time in Game 7. He would share the mound with Matt Harrison, who was the Rangers' starting pitcher for Game 3, when the Cardinals won 16-7. The Cardinals would be without one of their better hitters in Game 7. Due to the hand injury he suffered during the pickoff play in Game 6, Matt Holliday was unable to play. Allen Craig started in left field instead. Ian Kinsler led off Game 7 with a single. He then tried to steal second on the first pitch to Elvis Andrus, slipped, and was thrown out. Andrus eventually worked a walk, and then Josh Hamilton ripped an RBI double, giving the Rangers an early lead. Michael Young then built on that lead with a double of his own, driving in Hamilton. Carpenter proceeded to retire Beltre and Cruz to end the inning, but the Rangers had an early 2-0 lead. Matt Harrison got 2 quickouts in the bottom of the first, but then his command began to slip. He walked Pujols on 4 pitches, then he walked Berkman on 5 pitches, bringing up the absolute last guy that the Rangers wanted to face with men on base, David Freese. On a 3-2 count, Freese lined a double to left field, driving in both Pujols and Berkman. Freese's game-tying double had a WPA of 20%. It was Freese's 7th hit this postseason, with a win probability added of 18% or more. The score remained 2-2 until the bottom of the 3rd. With no one on and 1 out, Allen Craig hit a 3-2 pitch over the right field wall for a home run. It was the 2nd home run that Craig had hit since replacing the injured Matt Holliday partway through the previous game. The Cardinals led 3-2. After giving up 2 runs in the first inning, Chris Carpenter settled in and returned to his usual form. He pitched a 1-2-3 4th inning with 2 strikeouts, then a scoreless 5th inning, allowing only a single. The top of the 5th also featured this catch by David Freese, because why not? Might as well add another clip to his postseason highlight reel. In the bottom of the 5th inning, the Rangers shot themselves in the foot a bit. Scott Feldman came in to pitch, and he started the inning by inducing a ground out from Ryan Theriot. Feldman then walked Allen Craig and hit Pujols with a pitch in an 0-2 count, giving the Cardinals 2 base runners with only 1 out. Feldman got Berkman to hit the ball on the ground, but it was too weak for the Rangers to do anything other than get the out at first. Craig and Pujols moved to second and third. David Freese stepped into the batter's box with 2 outs and 2 men in scoring position. The Rangers had seen enough of what Freese can do in situations like this. They chose to intentionally walk him, loading the bases for Yadier Molina. On a 3-1 count, Feldman threw what appeared to be ball 4, but home plate umpire Jerry Lane called it a strike, pushing the count to 3-2 and giving Feldman another chance. But Feldman walked Molina on the next pitch anyway, bringing in a run for St. Louis. Ron Washington took out Feldman and brought in C.J. Wilson to get out of the jam. While the Cardinals chose to start their ace in Game 7 on 3 days rest, Washington opted not to. Now, Wilson would be tasked with coming into a high-leverage relief situation. Wilson had experience as a relief pitcher, as he mainly pitched out of the pen from 2005 to 2009, but he had been dealing with command issues as of late. Prior to this appearance, Wilson had already tied the AL/NL record for most walks allowed in a single postseason, walking 19 batters in 26 2/3 innings pitched. The very first pitch he threw in Game 7 hit Rafael Furcal, forcing home another run. Wilson then struck out Skip Schumacher to end the inning, but the Cardinals scored 2 runs in an inning in which they had 0 hits. The Rangers gave up 2 runs on 3 walks and 2 hit batsmen. The Cardinals ended the 5th inning with a 5-2 lead and an 88% probability of winning the World Series. Chris Carpenter retired the Rangers 1-2-3 in the top of the 6th. Nelson Cruz, the second batter of the inning, hit a deep fly ball to left field, but Alan Craig robbed him of what would have been a record-setting 9th postseason home run. After giving up 2 runs on 3 hits in the top of the 1st, Carpenter allowed just 2 hits over the next 5 innings. Wilson recorded a 1-2-3 inning of his own in the bottom half of the 6th. Carpenter gave up a double to the first batter of the 7th inning, David Murphy. Manager Tony La Russa took Carpenter out of the game and gave the ball to lefty Arthur Rhodes to face the left-handed batter Endy Chavez, who was sent in to pinch hit for the pitcher. After the pitching change, though, the Rangers pinch hit again, choosing to have Yorvit Torrealba face Rhodes rather than Chavez. Rhodes got Torrealba to fly out, and he was taken out of the game after throwing just 3 pitches. Octavio Dotel came in to face the right-handed bats of Ian Kinsler and Elvis Andrus, and he retired them both to end the inning. Let's talk a little bit about Arthur Rhodes, though. Rhodes had a very specific job in the 2011 postseason. Get an important left-handed batter out. And when I say an important left-handed batter, I mean one important left-handed batter. Let's take a look at Rhodes' stats in the 2011 postseason. His first appearance was in Game 1 of the NLDS. He faced 1 batter and recorded 1 out. His next appearance was in Game 2 of the NLDS. He faced 1 batter and recorded 1 out. Then Game 4 of the NLDS. 1 batter faced, 1 out. Game 2 of the NLCS. 1 batter faced, 1 walk. Game 4 of the NLCS. 3 batters faced. 1 reached on an error, 2 outs. Game 1 of the World Series. 1 batter faced, 1 out. Game 2 of the World Series. 1 batter faced, 1 out. And now Game 7 of the World Series. 1 batter faced, 1 out. Arthur Rhodes made 8 appearances in the 2011 playoffs. In 7 of those 8 appearances, he faced only a single batter. He allowed 0 runs, 0 hits, and 1 walk. He had a very specific role, and he performed incredibly in it. And here's the kicker. Arthur Rhodes started the 2011 season as a Texas Ranger. He was released by the Rangers on August 8th and signed with the Cardinals on August 11th. The Cardinals got an insurance run in the bottom of the 7th as Yadier Molina drove in a run with a single. Molina's single gave the Cardinals a 6-2 lead and a 98% win expectancy. Lance Lynn came in to face the heart of the Rangers' order, and he retired Josh Hamilton, Michael Young, and Adrian Beltre on just 11 pitches. After Texas threw a 1-2-3 inning of their own, Jason Mott was given the ball to record the final 3 outs. The first batter was Nelson Cruz, who had hit 8 home runs in the postseason, including 2 in the World Series. Mott got him to fly out. 2 outs to go. Mike Napoli came to bat next. Napoli had a 173 OPS plus during the regular season and had driven in 10 runs in the World Series. Mott got him to ground out. 1 out to go. David Murphy was the last man standing between the Cardinals and the most unlikely World Series victory in MLB history.
In the air to left, well hit. Back is Craig. What a team. What a ride. The Cardinals are world champs in 2011.
morning of September 6th, the St. Louis Cardinals stood 8.5 games back of the Atlanta Braves for the National League wildcard spot, with only 21 games left to play. Their odds of making the playoffs were just 0.8%, and their odds of winning the World Series were just 0.1%. On October 28th, they were World Series champions. In the NLDS, they were down 2-1 against the team with the best regular season record in baseball, and possibly the greatest pitching staff of all time. Their series win expectancy was just 14% after they fell behind 2-0 in Game 4. But they came back, won Game 4, and won Game 5 to advance. In the NLCS, their win expectancy was just 34% after dropping Game 1 to the Brewers. They won 4 of the next 5 games to advance to the World Series. And in the World Series, when they were down 3-2 in the series and 7 runs to 5 in the game, their championship win expectancy was just 2% after Ryan Theriot made the first out in the bottom of the 9th. They were down to their last strike in the 9th, but they fought back to tie the game. Then, after Josh Hamilton's 10th inning 2-run home run, the Cardinals' win expectancy plummeted to 4%. Again, they were down to their last strike. And again, they fought back to tie the game and stay alive. The 2011 Cardinals aren't just the most unlikely World Series champions because of their miraculous comeback to qualify for the playoffs. The 2011 Cardinals are the most unlikely World Series champions because they defied the odds over and over and over again. In perhaps the most obvious vote ever, David Freese was named World Series MVP. He became the 6th player to win LCS MVP and World Series MVP in the same postseason. 3 more players have done it since. Freese hit .397 with a 1258 OPS in the postseason. He drove in 21 runs, which was a record at the time. The record has since been broken by Adolis Garcia, who drove in 22 runs in the 2023 postseason. Freese also set 2 more postseason records, both of which still stand. Freese's cumulative WPA in the 2011 postseason was 1.91, which, in percentage form, means he increased the Cardinals' probability of winning games by a total of 191% in the 2011 playoffs. This is the highest WPA by a position player in a single postseason. In addition, Freese's cumulative championship win probability added was 82.6%, which is the highest in a single postseason by a position player, and it's not really close. In second place is Hal Smith in 1960, who only had 8 plate appearances. Smith holds the record for most pivotal play of all time, as his home run in the 8th inning of Game 7 of the 1960 World Series increased the Pirates' likelihood of winning by 63.6%. For more information about that, check out this video that I did on the 1960 World Series. Freese actually held the record for most career championship win probability added in the postseason by a position player prior to last year. His 2011 postseason alone tied him for the record with Mickey Mantle. He then took sole possession of the record in 2012. In 2025, he was surpassed by George Springer. Although Freese's performance was legendary, the Cardinals also had some other standout players whose contributions in the postseason should not be ignored. As mentioned previously, 40-year-old Arthur Rhodes perfected the art of being a lefty specialist, appearing in 8 games and not allowing a single hit. Chris Carpenter tossed 36 innings with a 3.25 ERA. Lance Berkman hit .313 with an 851 OPS. His 54.5% championship win probability added is the 5th most ever in a single postseason. Alan Craig, who started most of the NLDS and NLCS games on the bench before taking a more prominent role in the World Series, OPS'd over 1,000. And Albert Pujols hit .353 with an 1155 OPS and 16 RBIs in what would end up being his last hurrah as a Cardinal. For the next decade at least. In the offseason, he would sign a 10-year, $240 million contract with the Angels. Pujols would eventually return to St. Louis on a 1-year deal in 2022 for the final season of his career. The next season, MLB changed its playoff format. Instead of 1 wildcard team per league, there would be 2, and the 2 wildcard teams would face off in a 1-game playoff to see which team moves on to the Division Series round. If the dramatic late-season comebacks by the Rays and the Cardinals to beat out the Red Sox and the Braves had happened just 1 year later, it would have been a non-story. Rather than deciding which teams made the playoffs, Game 162 would have only determined which team had home field advantage in the wildcard game. Funnily enough, the Cardinals finished 6 games behind the Braves in the NL wildcard race in 2012. But with the new format, the teams would play a 1-game playoff to determine who would face the Washington Nationals in the NLDS. The Cardinals beat the Braves 6-3. Even though they didn't catch them in the standings this time, the new format allowed the Cardinals to unexpectedly ruin Atlanta's playoff hopes 2 years in a row. In 2023, Cardinals fans elected David Freese to the team's Hall of Fame, largely due to his heroics in the 2011 postseason. Freese, however, declined the honor. The assumption at the time seemed to be that he had a case of imposter syndrome, a feeling that he wasn't good enough to deserve it or that he didn't belong with the other Cardinals legends. but his statement at the time actually suggests something different. In his response to being elected, one sentence in particular from Freese stands out. "I look at who I was during my tenure, and that weighs heavily on me." I have to imagine that Freese is referring to the alcoholism and depression he dealt with while playing for the Cardinals. In 2009, when he was a rookie, Freese was arrested for driving with a blood alcohol level that was nearly 3 times the legal limit. In a 2017 interview, Freese revealed that he didn't really care about living during this period of his life. "I was depressed. I was always depressed. I never tried to do anything to myself, but I didn't care about my life. You win the World Series in your hometown, and you become this guy in a city that loves Cardinal baseball. And sometimes it's the last guy you want to be." In the 2013 offseason, the Cardinals traded Freese to the Angels, believing that the best thing for him would be to get out of his hometown of St. Louis. The move to California coincided with Freese meeting his future wife, Marin, who Freese credits with helping him turn his life around. "I always wanted to change, but it was so hard, right up until I met Marin. I don't know if we met at the right time or not, but it was a blessing. She's just tough. I need that, and I want that. She challenges the hell out of me, and I love it." When Freese declined to be inducted into the Cardinals Hall of Fame in 2023, stating, "I look at who I was during my tenure, and that weighs heavily on me," he's probably not referring to who he was as a ball player. He's referring to who he was as a person. Before I end this video, there is an elephant that's been chilling in the room with us this whole time that I should probably address. Earlier, I mentioned that the 2011 Cardinals had the 19th biggest comeback from 1903 to 2013 according to Smart Mode on Cool Standings, and they had the 6th biggest comeback according to Dumb Mode. This leaderboard, of course, is for comebacks to make the playoffs, not to win the World Series. Most of these teams with bigger comebacks than the 2011 Cardinals didn't win the World Series, but there are a few that did. Even though I've continually referred to the 2011 Cardinals as the most unlikely World Series champions, there are 5 teams with bigger Smart Mode comebacks and 2 teams with bigger Dumb Mode comebacks that went on to win the World Series that year. However, I would argue that the 2011 Cardinals winning the World Series was still less likely than these other teams winning. The 1906 White Sox had a 0.8% smart probability of making the postseason on July 15th, and a 1.4% dumb probability of making the postseason on July 28th. They went on to win the 1906 World Series. While the 1906 White Sox came back from longer smart odds to make the postseason compared to the 2011 Cardinals, the 1906 White Sox only had to win 1 series afterwards, while the Cardinals had to win 3 series in a row. The same can be said about the 1934 Cardinals, who had a 0.7% smart probability of making the postseason on September 6th, and a 2.9% dumb probability of doing so on September 5th. The 1978 Yankees came back from a 0.6% smart probability and a 0.9% dumb probability in mid-July, but they only had to win 2 playoff series after qualifying for the postseason, as there was no division series until 1995. The 1964 Cardinals have the 3rd biggest comeback according to both Smart Mode and Dumb Mode. Their smart probability of making the postseason was just 0.2% on July 24th, and their dumb probability was just 0.7% on August 23rd. But again, they had to win fewer series than the 2011 Cardinals after qualifying for the postseason. In 1964, the postseason was just the World Series. If the 1964 Cardinals had a 0.7% dumb probability of making the postseason, then their dumb probability of winning the World Series would have been 0.35%. By comparison, the 2011 Cardinals had a slightly higher dumb probability of making the playoffs at 0.8%, but since they then had to win 3 series after that, their dumb probability of winning the World Series would have been just 0.1%. In my opinion, there is only one team that has an argument as a more unlikely World Series winner than the 2011 Cardinals, the 1914 Boston Braves. After losing both games of a doubleheader on July 4th, the Braves sat in last place in the National League, 15 games back of the first place New York Giants. Their smart odds of making the postseason, which in 1914 was just the World Series, was less than 0.1%, and their dumb odds were 0.2%. This gave them the same dumb odds of winning the World Series that the 2011 Cardinals had on the morning of September 6th, but longer smart odds. The Braves then went 68-19 for the rest of the season, catapulting them from last place to first place, from 15 games back to 10.5 games ahead. The Braves then swept the Philadelphia Athletics in the World Series. And I think that's why I would personally give the most unlikely title to the 2011 Cardinals instead of the 1914 Braves. The Braves made an insane turnaround, but they simply dominated everyone, including their World Series opponents, once they figured it out as a team. The Cardinals had to fight and claw every step of the way. The Cardinals didn't just make a regular season comeback, they made multiple comebacks throughout the postseason as well. Thank you all for watching, and an extra thank you to all of my Patreon supporters and YouTube members. If you want to support me, you can add your name to the list by clicking the link in the description or the join button here on YouTube. Thanks again, and we will see you tomorrow night.